When we think about chemistry, we usually picture a lab, right? White coats, bubbling beakers, all that stuff. But what if I told you it's happening all around us all the time? From these incredible explosions in the sky to just making dinner. It's everywhere. So, let's get into it.
Okay, I know this sounds like the start of a weird joke, but seriously, what do these two things have in common? They seem like polar opposites. Well, it turns out they're both powered by the exact same incredible process. And by the end of this, you're going to see that connection clear as day.
All right, so let's start with the star of the show, the big idea that makes everything happen, the chemical reaction. This is the engine that drives all of this amazing change.
Now the key word here, the one you really got to remember, is rearrange. A chemical reaction isn't just when something changes its form, like ice melting into water. That's just a physical change. No, this is much cooler. This is about taking the same fundamental building blocks and snapping them together in a totally new way to make something completely different.
So, how can you tell if you're looking at one? Well, you've got to be a detective and look for the clues. Think about what happens when you mix baking soda and vinegar. You get all those bubbles, right? That's a gas being produced. Or how a bonfire feels hot. That's a temperature change. These are the telltale signs that a chemical shuffle is happening.
And what's really amazing is the scale of it all. I mean, the very same fundamental process that shoots a massive rocket into space is also what's happening when an apple you sliced up starts to turn brown on your counter. It's the same science, just on a wildly different scale.
But to really get what's going on, we need to zoom in. I mean, way, way in. We need to look at the tiny building blocks that make up absolutely everything. So let's leave the world that we can see with our own eyes and dive into the microscopic universe of atoms, because that is where all the action, all the real magic of chemistry actually happens.
The easiest way to think about atoms is to picture them as Lego bricks. In a chemical reaction, you don't get new bricks out of nowhere, and you don't lose any of the old ones. You just take your creation apart and click the same bricks back together in a new way to build something totally different.
So, what makes one Lego brick, say a red one, different from a blue one? In the world of atoms, it all comes down to one tiny particle, the proton. An atom with just one single proton in its core, that's always hydrogen. Two protons? That's helium. That number is like the atom's social security number. It defines its identity, whether it's oxygen or gold or anything else.
All right, every system has rules, right? Well, chemistry has one golden rule, one law that governs everything and can never, ever be broken.
And this is it, the law of conservation of mass. It sounds really grand, but the idea is actually super simple and so powerful. It just means that in any reaction, the universe keeps perfect track of everything. Nothing ever just vanishes into thin air.
Look, it's as simple as this. If you weigh all your ingredients before you start, we call those the reactants, and then you weigh everything you made at the end, the products, the weight will be exactly the same. If you start with 10 grams of stuff, you're going to end with 10 grams of stuff. Every single little atom is accounted for. The books are always balanced.
But wait a minute, how did anybody figure all this stuff out? It wasn't just a lucky guess, I can tell you that. It was all discovered through a very careful, very structured way of asking questions.
And this is that process, the scientific method. It's basically a roadmap. It takes you from having a simple question like, I wonder what happens when I mix these two things, all the way to a solid conclusion that's backed up by actual evidence from a real experiment.
Now, a huge part of doing a good experiment is controlling the variables. You change just one thing on purpose, that's your independent variable, so you can see how it affects something else, the dependent variable. And all the while, you keep everything else exactly the same. That's the only way you can be totally sure that A really caused B.
Okay, so we've talked about these big ideas, reactions, atoms, scientific laws. Now let's pull it all out of the abstract and bring it into a place we all know really, really well.
Seriously, your kitchen is basically your own personal chemistry lab. Every time you follow a recipe, you're not just cooking, you're running a series of complex and delicious chemical reactions. Just think about it for a second. That beautiful brown crust on a steak, that's a famous chemical process called the Maillard reaction. A cake rising in the oven, that's our old friend, gas production, thanks to baking soda. You see the pattern here? All those signs of a chemical reaction we talked about earlier, they're happening right there on your stovetop and in your oven every single day.
So, the next time you're cooking or even just see a banana get brown spots, take a second and look a little closer.
You're not just watching something change. You are witnessing the fundamental dance of atoms that literally shapes our entire world. So the only real question is, what new reactions will you discover today?